into varieties by her threefold modes. Material nature creates the forms of the living entities, and the living entities, seeing this, are illusioned by the knowledge covering feature of the illusory energy. Purport by divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Material energy has the power to cover knowledge. But this covering cannot be applied to the Supreme Personality of God. It is applicable only to the praja, or those who are born with material bodies, the conditioned souls. The different kinds of living entities vary according to the modes of material nature, as explained in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literature. In Bhagavad Gita 7.12, it is very nicely explained that although the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance are born of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not subject to them. In other words, the energy emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot act on him, meaning Krishna. It acts on the conditioned souls who are covered by the material energy. The Lord is the father of all living entities because he impregnates material energy with the conditioned souls. Therefore, the conditioned souls get bodies created by the material energy, whereas the father of the living entities is aloof from the three modes. It is stated in the previous verse that the material energy was accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order that he might exhibit pastime for the living entities who wanted to enjoy and lord it over the material energy. This world was created through the material energy of the Lord for the so-called enjoyment of such living entities. Why this world was created for the sufferings of the conditioned souls is a very intricate question. There is a hint in the previous verse in the word lilaya, which means for the pastimes of the Lord. The Lord wants to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is the enjoyer but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This material energy is created, therefore, for anyone who pretends to enjoy. An example can be cited here that there is no necessity for the government's creation of a separate police department, but because it is a fact that some of the citizens will not accept the state laws, a department to deal with criminals is necessary. There is no necessity, but at the same time, there is a necessity. Similarly, there was no necessity to create this material world for the sufferings of the conditioned souls, but at the same time, there are certain living entities known as Anitya Bada who are eternally conditioned. We say that they have been conditioned from time immemorial because no one can trace out when the living entity, the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, became rebellious against the supremacy of the Lord. It is a fact that there are two classes of men. Those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord and those who are atheists or agnostics who do not accept the existence of God and who want to create their own laws. They want to establish that everyone can create his own laws or his own religious path without tracing out the beginning of the existence of these two classes, at least two, uh, sorry. It is a fact that there are two classes of men, those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord, and those who are atheists or agnostics, who do not accept the existence of God and who want to create their own laws. They want to establish that everyone can create his own laws or his own religious path without tracing out the beginning of the existence of these two classes. We can take it for granted that some of the living entities revolted against the laws of the Lord. Such entities are called conditioned souls, for they are conditioned by the three modes of material nature. Therefore, the words guna vichitra are used here. In the material world, there are 8,400,000 species of life. As spirit souls, they are all transcendental to this material world. Why then do they exhibit themselves in different stages of life? The answer is given here. They are under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because they were created by the material energy, their bodies are made of the material elements. Covered by the material body, the spiritual identity is lost, and therefore the word mumuhe is used here, indicating that they have forgotten their own spiritual identity. This forgetfulness of spiritual identity is present in the jivas or souls who are conditioned, being subject to being covered by the energy of material nature. Jnana guhaya is another word used. Guha means covering, because the knowledge of the minute conditioned souls is covered. They are exhibited in many species of life. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th chapter, 5th canto. I'm sorry, 7th chapter, 5th canto. The living entities are illusioned by the material nature, by the material energy. In the Vedas also it is stated that the eternal living entities are covered by different modes, and that they are called tricolored, tricolored, red, white, and blue living entities. Red is the representation of mode of passion. White is the representation of mode of goodness, and blue is the representation of the mode of ignorance. These modes of material nature belong to the material energy, and therefore the living entities under these different modes of material nature have different kinds of material bodies. Because they are forgetful of their spiritual identities, they think the material bodies to be themselves. To the conditioned soul, me means the material body. This is called moha or bewilderment. It is repeatedly said in the Katha Upanishad that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is never affected by the influence of the material nature. It is rather the conditioned souls or the minute infinitesimal parts and parcels of the Supreme who are affected by the influence of the material nature and who appear in different bodies under the material modes. Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama, Rama
Rama,
Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada. So, Canto 3, Chapter 26, verse number, or text number 5. Divided into varieties by her threefold modes, material nature creates the forms of the living entities, and the living entities seeing this, are illusioned by the knowledge covering feature of the illusory energy. Well, what we're understanding here is that all the living entities in the material world are illusions and acting uh, in ways that keep them under the spell of the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And because the everybody has an eternal soul, it is possible to be eternally conditioned by the material nature and suffer unnecessarily. Or it is possible that one could be liberated by practicing Krishna consciousness and go back to the spiritual world. But even in the spiritual world, there is a type of illusion, just like Mother Yasoda. She is in an illusion, thinking that Krishna is her son, and therefore she can sometimes tie him up because he's naughty or spank him and so forth. So if she was cognizant that Krishna is Supreme Personality Godhead, she would not be able to do that. So therefore, the material energy is functioning in such a way that for devotees, the material energy, the modes of material energy helps them come closer to Krishna uh, because of their love and devotion. And therefore, it puts them in illusion to think that they are, uh, mother or father, and Krishna is their son, and they can tie him up or uh, chase after him and catch him for being naughty and so forth. Or they, but they are chasing Krishna out of love and devotion. Now, in another case, they are in illusion also, but Maya is acting in a different way. The illusion by which they want to tie up Krishna is based on love and devotion. So that is not Maya. That is the functioning of love uh, with it, which is not called Maya. It is called the transcendental uh, position of love for the living entities, love for Krishna. However, when people are overwhelmed by Maya, they act as if they are controllers of the material nature, and they become trapped by Maya, and they're not able to function with genuine love and devotion. They are, because they develop this false ego, and they actually think that Krishna is an ordinary boy, and that they have the right to uh, control Krishna, or at least they try to control Krishna. So this was the problem of Indra and other demigods. They were not convinced that Krishna is the supreme personality because he's appearing as a young, very young boy, or even as a child, and they were not sure if Krishna appearing in as a very, very young boy, even as a toddler, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they tried to control the Lord. And when they tried to do that, they became flummoxed or confused because the Lord uh, used his transcendental energies to baffle them and not make them, not become controlled by them. On the other hand, Krishna accepts to be controlled by his pure devotees and acts as if he is subordinate to them. In fact, Krishna likes to be subordinate to his pure devotees. So all this is bewildering for materialistic people. And in order for devotees to uh, chase after Krishna, like Mother Yasoda chases after him sometimes and tries to tie him up. And uh, eventually, Krishna, out of his mercy, lets her catch him and tie him up. This is out of love. Uh, this is part of the transcendental pastime of the Lord. But no one can actually catch the Lord. No one can actually tie him up. It's only because of the loving devotion of Mother Yasoda that she's able to do that. And Krishna accepts to seem to be subordinate to her. This is all confusing for non-devotees, and therefore they have a hard time accepting that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, devotees who have actual love and devotion for Krishna are not fooled by his seemingly mundane activities. Of course, they're not mundane activities, but they look like it because of the desire of the Lord to have pastimes with his pure devotees. You can't have pastimes with Krishna if he's always the Supreme Lord and we are always subject to him. Because the Lord actually enjoys more being controlled by his devotee than being the controller. Now, this is very, very difficult for people to understand. Therefore, there is what you would call states of illusion. Sometimes the illusion is to uh, foster or permit pastimes of the Lord, and sometimes illusion actually keeps people away from the Lord. So you have Maya and Yoga Maya. Maya keeps people away from the Lord, and Yoga Maya permits people to have very intimate relationships with the Lord. Both are an illusion, but the illusion of a devotee brings one closer to Krishna, and the illusion of the sense gratifiers takes them away from Krishna. This is all confusing. It's all done properly by the will of the Lord. Therefore, when these things are explained in the Shastra, then we can understand more clearly what is happening. Without this explanation of the Shastra, we're completely in illusion. We can't understand how these things are possible. Therefore, it says here, the energy emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot act on him. It acts on the conditioned souls who are covered by the material energy. The Lord is the Father of all living entities because he impregnates material energy with the conditioned soul. Therefore, the conditioned souls get bodies created by the material energy, whereas the Father of the living entities is aloof from the three modes. It is stated in the previous verse that the material energy was accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order that he might exhibit pastimes for the living entities who wanted to enjoy and lord it over the material energy. This world was created through the material energy of the Lord for the so-called enjoyment of such living entities. Why this material world was created for the sufferings of the conditioned souls is a very intricate question. Yes, it's very intricate, very confusing question. There is a hint in the previous verse, in the word lilaya, which means for the pastimes of the Lord. The Lord wants to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. Well, this is what genuine devotees of the Lord want to do also. They want to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. Yeah, so as long as one has the enjoying temperament and engages in activities of sense gratification, there's no possibility of understanding who Krishna is. And that's why it's a very rare thing for someone to become a genuine devotee of the Lord. Out of many thousands of people that attempt to become spiritual and engage in devotional service, hardly one becomes a pure devotee. Why? Well, because very few people want to actually be surrendered to the Lord. This surrendering to the Lord is a very special thing and requires full attention of the living entity. Full attention means they're not in the least bit attracted by anything in the material world. They are only attracted by the beauty of the Lord and his transcendental pastimes, and they want to be engaged in those pastimes with the Lord with no hankering for the material energy, meaning sense gratification in the material world. That is a rare thing. Therefore, the majority of people never rise above the level of being controlled by the modes of material nature because they have this perverted desire for sense gratification. Now, we use our senses also in Krishna consciousness, but we use our senses to please the senses of Krishna. And the non-devotees, they use their senses for their own sense gratification. That's the main point of what's going on in the material world. The material world is a chance for living entities to go back to Godhead, but it's also an opportunity for them that are in illusion to engage in sense gratification. So, therefore, those people who have understood this give up completely their desire for sense gratification and keep themselves continually in devotional service because devotional service is the only way to become freed from the process of material illusion. Devotional service means that you rise up they rise up uh, uh, from the modes of material nature to the transcendental mode of pure devotion and love for Krishna. Now you come under another illusion, and that's the illusion, again, of forgetting Krishna in order to engage in intimate pastimes with Krishna. So Maya is acting in different ways. One way is to put the devotee in total illusion so they forget their relationship with Krishna. And the other way is to put the devotees in illusion so that they can have intimate pastimes with the Lord. That's why there's Maya and Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya brings you closer to Krishna, and Maya takes you farther away from Krishna. This is all bewildering for non-devotees. But genuine devotees, they can hear this from genuine devotees. They can read it in bona fide scriptures, and eventually they give up their desire for enjoying in the material world and completely surrender to the Lord and engage in the pastimes of serving the Lord with love and devotion. Therefore, it says, this world was created through the material energy of the Lord for the so-called enjoyment of such living entity. Why this material world was created for the sufferings of the conditioned souls is a very intricate question. There is a hint in the previous verse in the word lilaya, which means for the pastimes of the Lord. The Lord wants to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. It is stated in Bhagavad that no one is the enjoyer but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This material energy is created, therefore, for anyone who pretends to enjoy. An example can be cited here that there is no necessity for the government's creation of a separate police department, but because it is a fact that some of the citizens will not accept the state rules, a department to deal with criminal business. There is no necessity, but at the same time, there is a necessity. That's a very interesting statement. There is no necessity, but at the same time, there is a necessity. Similarly, there was no necessity to create this material world for the sufferings of conditioned souls, but at the same time, there are certain living entities known as Nityavada who are eternally conditioned. We say that they have been conditioned by time immemorial because no one can trace out when the living entity, the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, became rebellious against the supremacy of the Lord. Okay, now that is a very, very significant question. Our situation in the material world is because everyone in the material world has become at some time rebellious against the supremacy of the Lord. And how is that possible? Because there is minute independence. You see, and sometimes people say, well, why did God do this? Why don't he just make us, completely surrender to him? Well, because then we would be robots. We wouldn't be real people. You know, uh, we're not robots. We have what's called limited free will. And that limitation is either we can become Krishna conscious or we can reject Krishna conscious. That's limited free will. And why is it there? Because without free will, there would not be love. If we voluntarily surrender to Krishna that means we actually love Krishna. If we are programmed to be surrendered to the Lord's, then we're basically robots. There's not real love. Real love has to be based on, there has to be freedom in order to have pure love. And when there's pure love, we voluntarily decide every day, every hour, every minute, every second to be surrendered to the Lord and actually function as the eternal servant of the Lord. But at any time, anyone can decide not to do that. And then they fall down and they get entrapped by Maya. This is a very, very interesting thing. And the explanation of it has to be understood in order to free ourselves of the illusory desire for sense gratification. It's like uh, we are meant to, to be 24 hours engaged in Krishna consciousness. But sometimes we decide not to be engaged in Krishna's service. And that is when the material energy overwhelms us and we begin to waste time doing things that have no relationship to Krishna. But it is possible because we have limited free will. So there's a danger in having free will, right? Because you can use it in two ways. Either you use it to be always engaged in the service of the Lord, or you can use it to forget the Lord. And then, the question is, well, why did God make us like this? Well, because there would not be love if we were like robots, conditioned uh, by always being surrendered to the Lord. Surrender is a personal decision that we have to make in our life. And to stay surrendered is a continual decision to always be engaged in the service of the Lord. And so you don't just decide once and it's all over. No, you have to decide every second of life, not to waste 1 second of life and to always be engaged in Krishna's service. The service is the way to be connected to Krishna. Now, it is possible to serve mentally, but it is more, let's say, powerful to be served mentally and be served physically, not simply mentally. Now, it's much more difficult for Maya to trick us. Why is there Maya? Well, Maya is testing us. Just like, why are there tests in school? Well, to see if the student has actually understood the teacher's teaching. Uh, so you have to take tests. Now, if they change the whole educational system and they say, well, it's unfair to have tests because some people will pass them and some people will not pass them. And it's not right for the people who are not able to pass the test. So therefore, we won't give tests anymore. Well, that means that why? That's in order to uh, have everybody on the same, let's say, level. But that's not realistic because some people are not lazy. They want to learn. And there are people that are lazy that don't want to learn. And the only way you can differentiate between the two is if there is testing. If you eliminate the tests, then what will happen? There will be a lot of people who are engaged in unfeathered sense gratification, and they never learn anything. But when there are tests, then you can see who is learning and who is not learning. So there are some people, like educational persons or teachers who want to eliminate all testing of the students. And they have experimented, and those experiments are total failures because if there's no testing, there's no way of determining who's going to learn and who's not learning. That's why there's a test to see who is actually learning and who is not learning. If you eliminate all testing, then everybody will be, without any, let's say, supervision. And because of that, there are schools that kids go to, and they never learn to read. Why? Because there's no testing. There's chaos in that type of school. So there are young kids that because there's no really strict discipline in the school, they go from kindergarten to to become an adolescent and then and mature, and they still have never learned to read, even though they went to school. Why is that? Because the educational system is nonsense. So you can, but however, they're listening to rap music. They're, always watching television or movies and engaging in sense gratification, beginning very early in their life and not really paying attention. And they can end up going to school 10 years, 15 years, and still not be able to read and write. And there are a lot of examples of that, even in the United States. So, how is it possible that you can go to school and you never really learn to read and write? That's shocking. But there are schools like that because of the misbehavior of the students. And but yet they can hear rat music all day long, and you can see that the kids that are like that, they're very good at uh, the Ebola language. Look that up, Ebola. Ebola. It sounds like a disease.
Yeah, there is a Ebola virus is there.
Yeah. What does it say? What is Ebola? Uh, so the Lord is the Father of all living entities because he impregnates material energy with the conditioned souls. Therefore, the conditioned souls get bodies created by the material energy, whereas the Father of the living entities is aloof from the three modes. It is stated in the previous verse that the material energy was accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order that he might exhibit pastimes for the living entities who wanted to enjoy and lord it over the material energy. This world was created through the material energy of the Lord, the so-called enjoyment of such living entities. Why this material world was created from the suffering of the conditioned soul is a very intricate question. There is a hint in the previous verse in the word Lilaya, which means for the pastimes of the Lord. The Lord wants to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned soul. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is the enjoyer but the Supreme Personality of God. Did you look that word up?
Talks about the virus. In different languages, use short, simple, and clearly illustrated communication. They use pictures when possible. Engage with elders and other respected members of local communities. I'm not sure if this is.
So there's nothing that's coming up with that name, Ebola. Ebola, there is viruses, virus.
All right, then I'm saying the wrong word.
Ebola is the mix of Swahili and French.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a what you would call a hybrid type of
Language.
language.
What's the spelling?
EB.
Same wording.
The AI, Google AI gave the
Mm-hmm.
You have to look up chat.
GPT.
One place it says, Maharaj, the form of Swahili
Swahili and
used in communication tools may not be understood by local communities.
Yeah, in other words, saying it's uh, a type of language started by Black people. Right. And they understand, but normal normal people don't understand. Their own, it's a specialized type of language. It's basically for sense gratification.
Another place it says, Maharaj, in countries like Syria, Leon, and
Sierra Leone. It's not Syria. It's Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone,
In Africa.
Guinea, and Liberia. Only Liberia. Only a small percentage of people speak English or French, the languages in which most Ebola information is available.
Yeah. Okay, there's so many different things in this world. It's unbelievable. So, but you have American blacks that engage in that also. You know, when you hear uh, you know the uh, lyrics of black music, you don't really understand all the words, right? And they come up with different words. Like, for example, the word Karen. Look it up, Karen. Karen is referring to white uh, women who, I mean, it's a pejorative word. It's a word that's actually demeaning when they refer to white women as Karens. What does it say? This is what somebody could look up in chat. Yeah.
How is
Karen.
Language.
Yes, a Karen.
Yeah, this Karen is a slang term typically used to refer to a middle-class white American woman who is perceived as entitled or excessively demanding.
Right. Did you ever hear that before? Have to come to class here. This. Yeah. And usually it's black people that refer to women like that,
Mhm.
Right? And it's a pejorative word. I mean, pejorative, look that word up, pejorative. In other words, it's demeaning. It's not a positive thing. If a white woman is called a Karen from a black person, they mean that for them it's a nonsense woman.
Pejorative. It says a word expressing contempt or disapproval.
Yeah, see. So instead of using a curse word, they made this word up, Karen, to and it's usually used for white American ladies.
Yeah, middle-aged white
Middle
woman
class.
who's perceived
Middle
as entitled.
class. Yeah. Karen is a slang term typically used to refer to a middle class white American woman.
Now, how did it get into the dictionary? Because it is used mostly by black people to refer to middle-aged white women who are straight, and it's a way of insulting. But because white people don't understand the language of the black people, they don't really understand what's being meant. It's actually an insult to middle class white men. You didn't know that. Well, you don't need to know that to go back to Godhead. But this is what's going on in America. There are bona fide things and unbona fide things going on all the time, and mostly unbona fide things, where there are demeaning words that are very insulting and shows the lack of respect for women, black men and black women. Black men and black women use the term Karen. Right? It's to point out, middle-aged straight women, and it's a way to demean the existence of these type of women. Not that they're doing anything wrong, but they are seen by black people to be lesser than themselves. So it's all about who is. Now, what happens when these types of words and ideas come into the language? It makes black people seem to be superior to white people. That's the reason why they do that. And now you'll see that white girls are trying to use that type of language and so that they can act being black. uh, and this is all about who you are. So because there's no fundamental teaching that we are all the eternal servants of the Lord, and the Lord does not differentiate between so-called color of the skin, you see, but people who differentiate on the basis of color of the skin, all these categories become, end up in the dictionary. And the American slang, it's coming up with new words all the time. And usually they're referring to, those words are used to make what you would call straight people look like they're bad people. And therefore you have rap music that is using, foul language usually, and it's a way to control white people and make them look like they are bad, and that white black people are good, because they've made up this language that is specific to express their disapproval of regular people. So, why would they do that? Because they want to feel superior to the white man or the white woman. And why is that? It's because some white women and some white men think that they're superior than black people. So it's all based on bodily identification. But these different types of pejorative, or let's say language that's demeaning, comes into the vocabulary of people because they do not see things correctly. They see only the body, they don't see the soul. And therefore, they create these words in language that are demeaning, that are make people, let's say, they identify people as being lesser than themselves. So when they use the word, "Oh, she's a Karen," it's actually uh, identifying that person as not a good person. Look up the word Karen.
Let me just see. The Karen is a slang term typically used to refer to a middle-class white American woman who is perceived as entitled or excessively demanding.
Yeah, in other words, they look down on that person. There might be women that are like that, white women that are like that, but it does not, let's say, advance spiritual life by using those types of terminology, because you're actually demeaning them. So you're not making any spiritual progress by using that language. That language is meant to show the superiority of the person who's using that language, and demeaning the people that are being referred to like that. Like Prabhupada never used language like that. He when he came to America and he saw so many people engaged in sense gratification, mainly a lot of young people, he didn't say, "Oh, well, this is impossible. These people will never become devotees." No, of course, some of his god brothers thought it was impossible to make devotees out of Western people, especially Americans. But Prabhupada did not see them. He was not seeing their body. He was seeing the fact that they all have a relationship with Krishna, because Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. Therefore, they have a the ability to become devotees if they're properly trained. So what did Prabhupada do? He began to properly train uh, young Americans by not giving any rules and regulations in the beginning, simply giving prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna, until the devotees, or the initial devotees, said to Prabhupada, "Well, Prabhupada, are there any rules and regulations to Krishna consciousness?" He said, "Oh, by the way, there are. I will write it on a piece of paper." And then he wrote the 10 principles of that the devotees had to follow. Then they were sorry that they asked that question, because now they had to follow some rules and regulations. In the beginning, Prabhupada did not insist on the devotees following any rules and regulations. But because of Prabhupada's kindness and gentleness, Eventually, devotees asked, well, Prabhupada, are there any rules and regulations? And then Prabhupada said, oh, yeah, by the way, there are. And then he gave, and it's written, you can see it, you look up.
Yes, when we looked few months back, it's printed, posted here and on the paper on the
Okay,
wall.
good. Then they were sorry that they asked that question, you know.
Mhm.
But actually, it was Prabhupada's mercy to establish the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Well, he didn't establish them, he didn't invent them. But he very cleverly led the devotees to voluntarily ask that question. You can see how merciful Prabhupada is. He didn't force people to surrender right away.
Mm.
He gave them the opportunity to voluntarily surrender. But out of love and devotion, and by seeing them as being low-class people. He understood that everyone is constitutionally made to become the devotee of Krishna, but because of ignorance, people are overwhelmed by Maya, and they're not interested in Krishna consciousness. But everyone has the potential of being Krishna. Every human being has the potential of being Krishna conscious because we are all the children of Krishna. We all come from Krishna. That means we have a hereditary right to go back to Krishna. If we did not uh, belong to Krishna, then there wouldn't be any going back to Godhead. So that term, back to Godhead, implies that all living entities have the right to go back to Godhead if they're willing to be educated properly. This term, back to Godhead, is a very profound term. It implies that we all came originally from Krishna, and therefore we have the hereditary right to go back to Krishna. So therefore, it's a very profound statement. Why did Prabhupada use that statement? It's to show that our proprietary right is to go back to Godhead. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions?
Any questions online?
Okay, this very important statement here. This is the last paragraph of this verse. Second to the last paragraph. And it says, it is a fact that there are two classes of men. Those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord and those who are atheists or agnostics. When atheists doesn't believe in God and agnostics, they say, we don't say there's no God and we don't say there is God. We just don't know. So they leave, the question open. But basically, it's like not believing in God. So that's what it says in the last paragraph of the next to the last paragraph in the beginning says, it is a fact that there are two classes of men. Those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord and those who are atheists or agnostics who do not accept the existence of God and who want to create their own laws. They want to establish that everyone can create his own laws for his own religious without tracing out the beginning of the existence of these two classes. We can take it for granted that some of the living entities revolted against the laws of the Lord. Such entities are called conditioned souls, for they are conditioned by the three modes of material nature. Therefore, the words guna vichitra are used here In this material world, there are 8,400,000 species of life as spirit souls. They are all transcendental to this material world. Why then do they exhibit themselves in different stages of life? The answer is given here. They are under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because they were created by the material energy, their bodies are made of material elements. Covered by the material body, the spiritual identity is lost. And therefore, the word mumuhe is used here, indicating that they have forgotten their own spiritual identity. This forgetfulness of spiritual identity is present in the jivas or souls who are conditioned, being subject to being covered by the energy of material nature. Gana guhaya is another word used. Guha means covering. Because the knowledge of the minute conditioned souls is covered, they are exhibited in so many species of life. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th chapter, 1st canto. The living entities are an illusion by the material energy. In the Vedas, also it is stated that the eternal living entities are covered by different modes and that they are called tricolored, red, white, and blue living entities. Red is the representation of mode of passion. White is the representation of mode of goodness, and blue is the representation of the mode of ignorance. These modes of material nature belong to the material energy, and therefore the living entities under these different modes of material nature have different kinds of material body. Because they're forgetful of their spiritual identities, they think the material bodies to be themselves. To the conditioned soul, me means the material body. This is called moha or bewilderment. Yeah, whenever you hear a politician speak, they say, well, I will do this and I will do that. It's all about I. All the things that they're going to do if you vote for them. So the I is actually me. So all day long, they're talking about what they're going to do to help people. They don't say, I'm going to teach you to be Krishna conscious. They'll say, I'll put a chicken on everybody's table and a car in their garage. So that means that they're keeping the people satisfied because they have plenty of food and they have nice cars. Therefore, they're living the good life, so-called good life. Yeah, people that don't have a car and are not eating meat and not engaged in sense gratification, they're looked down upon as failures in life. So there's a new definition of success. The new definition is that you're having plenty of sense gratification and you have plenty of money and you're eating all kinds of things and that you make your own rules and regulations. You don't depend on the Lord at all. Okay. All right, we'll stop there today. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions.
No question.
All right, now we should think today about the influence of the three modes of material nature and how to become free from them. Otherwise, we'll be living in an illusory state of consciousness by being controlled by any one of the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. We have to rise above that by activity in Krishna consciousness and be in the transcendental mode of goodness, where all our life energies is directed toward pleasing Krishna in this lifetime, with the body and the mind and the senses. Hare Krishna.
Hare